Hello! Welcome to another stream. It's day 4 of 28 in a row. Now that I've fired this puppy up and I have it on 0 delay, which is perfect, I will post in Facebook and I'll send out a little tweet saying that we're going live. Hopefully we'll get some people joining real soon. Alrighty, so check my Twitch channel. Looks like we're on. Got it muted. You're not hearing double voices? I'm learning, baby. We're doing this stuff right. So anyway, day 4 of 28. Thank you very much for joining me. I got a comment from a listener or viewer the other day saying, his name is Philippe. He said that these daily Twitch streams are kind of like daily webinars. Instead of once a month, I'm giving 28 out in a row, which, yeah, I find that flattering. Thank you very much, Philippe. That's pretty nice. I've got some other really nice compliments too. The other day I played a session where I folded ace king suited in middle position versus under the gun raise in a situation which I didn't feel confident in, and after reviewing it later on, and I received some comments from it via email and then one via YouTube. And then, yeah, it was extremely nitty. At a minimum, I should have called. For whatever reason, in my mind, my only choice was to 3-bet or fold. And I didn't like that there was a 32 big blind shover with position on me. So who could have shoved, and he did one 3-bet shove out of nowhere. It surprised me, so I just didn't know what to make of the situation, so I folded. But at a minimum, I could have just called. Maybe a lot of other people would have called, but I could have flopped something nice. I still had position on the opener, at least under the gun. So yeah, that was a super nitty fold. I did a little bit of dissecting of that hand later on, and I found out that, yeah, that was nitty. I won't be making a fold like that again. At a minimum, I'll just be calling, even though I don't want to go multi-way with an ace-king suited. I'd prefer it heads up in position, of course, which that's why the whole 3-bet idea was the only play in my mind. Calling was out of the option to me, but it's not a bad option at all. Especially because it was a tag player who opened under the gun. He could have had a super strong range, so why would I want to put extra money? But I do know that tag players, nowadays, they often treat the under the gun as a steal position. You'll often see tight aggressive players and loose aggressives, but tight aggressives, you'll see their under the gun opening at like 20% in 6 max. Overall, their pre-flop raise might be down to like 16 or 18%, maybe probably not 60, maybe like 15% or so. But then you'll see the early position be 20%. Then you'll see MP and cutoff a little bit lower, and then of course the blinds lower still. Where they only 3-bet out of the blinds, that kind of thing. So they're different. They're different PFRs and the different in the different positions go up and down, but they average to maybe 15 or 16. But then under the gun, they're at 20%. So there are so many players like that out there. It's probably worth most of the time 3-betting the regs with ace king suited from their under the gun open. Alrighty, so today, the agenda for today, we're going to do a hand reading practice. We'll do some lessons learned from that ultimate guide to pre-flop calling ranges video by PartyPoker. Let's see, we'll do some Flopzilla work, and today is going to be a little different than the prior days. I won't be using the database at all, just Flopzilla today. We'll be seeing how different calling ranges, different calling ranges on different flops. We can say this different. Flopzilla work. How different calling ranges, that doesn't make sense, hit different flops. And then I'll assign you some homework. Of course, you don't have to do it. That's up to you. But if you want to improve your game, if you want to improve your understanding of how calling ranges hit flops, you might want to do it. But we'll get into that later on. First off, a hand reading practice. So, of course, we need Flopzilla open for that. Oh, and here's that ace king suited hand I was looking at. Yep. Remove that tag. So remember, when you're doing hand reading practice, you simply look for a hand that went to showdown because you generally want to just know if you made a good read or not. I'm sorry, you want to read them through the streets, but then you want to know if you're correct by seeing their showdown hand. So we sort this by dollars won. So ace 8 7 6. So let's do this 7 6. Actually, let's see. That's a small amount to lose. Only 7 big blinds. There might not have been that much action. Bet, check, check. Okay, on the other streets. Let's not look at that hand. And those are very small amounts. Let's go to the cutoff now. Pocket jacks, that's a great one. Oh, look, and we flop an overpair. How do we lose here? Let's take a look. So, interesting play. Okie Mike here. Super passive, 55-13. 0% 3-bet out of 29 instances. 29 times he didn't choose to 3-bet. And then he does 3-bet right here, and it's a min 3-bet. What does that tell you? Well, let me open my chat, so in case anybody does chat, I don't have that open there. Okay, cool beans. All right. That tells me that he really likes his hand. He's trying to get value out of me. He wants me to re-raise. Sometimes that's a bluff, but look how passive he is in general. Plays 55%, raises 13%. That means he calls the other 42%, that gap in the middle. The fact that he raised tells me he's got something good. The fact that he min raised just wants me to commit more tells me he has something great. So let's see what he has here. Or let's not see what he has. Let's give him a range first. So what do we got? Heart club. Heart crub on the jacks. Good, good, good. So let's start with a very simple 3-bet range here. How funny. Do I really want to range him this tightly? I kind of do. Let's look at 10s or better. A guy this passive is not 3-betting 10s. He's not 3-betting jacks. He's calling jacks. He's not 3-betting ace queens. Okay, you know, I am going to start with a super tight range on this foo. I'm going to. Let's see. If he comes in with something crazy, I'll be shocked by it. But just look at his passivity right there. He doesn't like to fold to steals, but what he's doing most of the time, let's take a look. Let's see here. Call steal. He's calling 60% of the time. So he folds 40, calls 60. He hasn't raised versus any steal yet at all. Yeah, 3-bet versus steals, 0 so far. Out of how many instances? Out of 10 instances, never raising versus steals. 59 hands. I've been at the table 59 hands, so he was here before me. I got here. Oh, look it. He's a short stack as well. Oh my gosh, he only has $3. I bet we get it in really quickly, and he does have the queens. I mean, I'm even willing to take away the aces, the ace kings for sure out of that range, because those are just calling in this. Well, you know, he's got a short stack. He might just want to get it in with any. So let's just go jacks or better. Let's do that. Let's put the jacks in. Even though we have jacks, he's only got 2 other pocket jacks. It's a possibility. I doubt he's doing it with 10s, because my thinking is, wouldn't all of these 10s through 7s, wouldn't they 3-bet shove in just to get me to fold? And if I call, he has a pocket pair that could hold up against my ace king, ace queen. That's my thinking right there. Yeah, I'm going to give him this super narrow of a range. So before we continue, my pocket jacks versus such a narrow range only has 37% equity. Not much at all. But, you know, so be it. 37% equity. We only need, what do we need right here to make this call? 18%. So we could hit a jack, which even if we hit a jack, that's kind of like, we don't need to hit a jack, you know. We don't need to rely on that set mining, because set mining, we need 20x odds behind. So to call 50 cents, I need $10 behind. He only got $3 behind. You know, I'm fine with getting it in here. Hopefully I just 4-bet and get it in. There's no point in, well, you know, I probably just call, and I'll probably get away from ace or a king on the flop, is my guess. Yeah, that's my guess. So, oh, I got it in. I said screw it. 431. And let's see what he has. Wow, I was way off. So that was a really short hand reading practice right there. He actually had pocket 6s. That means he's capable of making this play with all of these hands. Probably even down, yeah, I mean, probably every pair, right? He was probably just willing to get it in, figuring I'm on a steal. He's a short stack. I don't know what happened to lead up to this hand. I could go back through this session and take a look here. But yeah, I'm surprised. Such a passive player making the min raise. I often see those min raises, like those min 3-bets like that, from guys wanting to get value. Occasionally, they're from guys with crappy hands that they don't know what to do. It feels like they don't know what to do. Like, if I were him in this instance, I'm calling every time. I'm not just trying to get it in. I'm going to call and assess the flop. I mean, I never only have $3, which what was $3.50, so that was 14 big blinds. I never only have 14 big blinds in a cash game, which is I wonder if that's a weakness of mine. Not understanding how to play the short stack, or not understanding how my short stacked opponents play their short stack. That is a possible weakness. Let me see here. Where's my notes? Da, 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 da. Play their hands. That's an interesting one. That is something that we can study in the future for sure. Just look at a lot of short stack play. Look at flops where or look at hands where the effective stacks pre-flop or on the flop are like, 30 big blinds or less, that kind of a thing. So that's something totally we can study later to try to learn what hands the short stackers raise with, what hands they 3-bet shove with, what hands they call off with, what hands they min 3-bet like that with. Yeah, so that's that hand was a failure on my part. So I have 2 out of 3 is my record so far for those 3 hand reading exercises. Jack Jack is the hand we did today. Cool. So hit the summary position report. Show how to add move stats. Sorry, can't import. Okay, sweet. So that's the hand reading practice right there. We'll come back to Flopzilla in a little bit. So in the first session, if any of you saw that, I mentioned exporting this report, and I forgot to send that export out. Let me show you what that is real quick. It is my summary. So what this report, it opened up on the other page. Okay, so what this report is, you can see it has the position, hands, my currency, 1 big blinds per 100 win rate, VPIP, PFR call. It just goes in order here of all of this. Now, I exported just the data of the stats in order, that I have them in order. And they also coincide, or they match with the stats tracking document that I sent out 2 times already after the first and the second. So you can't take this report and import it and then have it automatically adjust these for you. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Real quick, you just simply right click, and this is where I exported the report, and it created a .csv file. I changed it into just a regular Excel file. So you you right click anywhere within the report, configure report. And then so now all of the stats are right here. So let's just imagine, even though I don't use the stat, let's just imagine cold call 2-bet was right here. So if cold call 2-bet was right here, you need to first find the report. Of course, they're all under stats and everything. But what I generally do is I'll just start typing in 1 or 2 keywords out of it, cold call. Hey, there's the cold call 2-bet pre-flop. Now, we want it after the call pre-flop 2-bet. So you highlight this and then just simply double click that. Bam, it pops up right below it. Now, let's say I put it in the wrong spot, or I just double clicked it and it went to the very bottom of the report. You simply take that stat and move it up or down with the arrows. And by doing it up or down, it's actually, I'll hit cancel. Up or down is actually left or right here. So the stats are presented from left to right on your screen, but within that configure menu, they're up to down. But whatever, I mean, it's easy to figure out. You could do that. But so now that you know how to insert your own stats, what you could do is take my report here that I will send out in today's email and, update your own or configure your own report with these stats. Then you'll have all the stats that I use in the order that I put them into as well. Yep. And then you can, of course, anytime add and remove stats as you see fit. Whatever does not help you study your game, get out of there. Let's see here. Cool. So, this video on YouTube, The Ultimate Guide to Preflop Calling Ranges, and it's by the PartyPoker channel. You can simply, type that into the Google search, or I sent you this link in a prior email and stuff, and I'll send it out in today's email. And actually I sent it out yesterday's email, so hopefully some of you watched it. So after going through that email, if you remember, it was the ones with the guy having his face down there in the corner. He started the video up there, moved down there, now he's over here as he's going through ranges and stuff. But these are my notes from watching that video. So I watched it yesterday, took notes on it and everything that he talked about, and he made a lot of good sense. He developed some really intricate, really detailed calling ranges, and he broke it down, which we'll take a look at in a little bit, but he broke the calling ranges for us to use okay, so he broke those calling ranges down by your position versus the guy who opened, whatever position opened. So if you're on the button, he said this is what you should call versus an early position open, a middle position, a cutoff open, that kind of a thing, you know. So the ranges expand, the calling ranges expanded as the position got closer to you. When the position was further away, when they were more narrow ranges, as usual, you know, under the gun is usually a pretty tight range. Your range versus under the gun call versus under gun open should be smaller. Your calling range should. So that's what that was about. And within the video, he also talked about just equities and playabilities of hands, and it was a really good video. I recommend you all check it out. I can't remember, 12 to 17 minutes, somewhere in that range. It wasn't a long video, but there was a lot to get out of it for sure. He kind of presented it like a you know, there were slides that he went through with all the information, and then all the different hand ranges at the end. So he talks about folding has an expected value of 0 in all but the small blind and the big blind. So the weakest parts of our calling ranges should be just above the EV of folding, which is 0. So if you're calling hands, so if you fold, let's just blank hand, Jack 8 suited. Let's say calling Jack 8 suited right now, in the long run, we can expect to make $0. Right? We're not losing any, we're not gaining any, we're just making 0. That's the cutoff. We don't want to call with the EV at 0. You want to call just above that. So Jack 9 suited would be the call. And EV is expected value. It's just how often your hand expects to win, given no pre-flop action. Just right now, this hand versus their likely range. In, you know, through random millions of flops, turns, and rivers, what's going to win? It's just hot and cold equity is basically what it is. So if the EV of folding is 0 with the Jack 8 suited, you want to call with the Jack 9 suited. You could put Jack 7 suited in your 3-bet bluffing range if you'd like, because if Jack 9 suited is worth a call, you don't necessarily want to 3-bet it because, hey, it's worth a call. I'm making money with this call. Sometimes, though, of course, 3-betting could be even more EV. Let's say, for example, in the long run, Jack 9 suited, if you call, you can expect to make $1 out of every single hand you play with that Jack 9 suited calling versus this guy opening. If that's the case, great, you can call, you know, for the rest of your life, Jack 9 suited versus this guy. But maybe 3-betting that Jack 9 suited in the same situation with that guy acting before us with his range, maybe 3-betting is $1.20, $1.20 EV profit, you know. So that $1.20 is better than the dollar, then of course you should 3-bet. But that's the kind of thing that, you know, it's all theoretical, kind of theoretical and stuff. You don't have to do either one. It's totally up to you. Just have that idea in mind. If something is 0 EV, and you can calculate EV, and I'm not really that good at calculating it, but you can calculate it over time. Well, you know, things like card runners EV. But the thing with cash games is, with cash games, there's so much possible action and so many different flops. I guess you could just use the EV calculator and do that kind of a thing. But then you have to set your opponent's range to be what it is versus your Jack 9 suited to give you that $1 EV. So it's something to calculate. Maybe we'll do that in a future video, but I doubt it. I use the idea of EV to help me make my decisions, but I don't actually go out there and calculate EV, exact EV of different hands in exact situations. Let's see here. Calling from out of position makes it harder for us to realize our equity or to win the pot with our weaker hands. So we need out of position calling hands to play well post flop. So they need to have some playability when you are doing those calls. And we need to devise 3-betting ranges that include value and bluff hands that are too weak and unprofitable to call. So like I just said, Jack 8 suited is the 0 EV line. So we might want to 3-bet that one, or even the Jack 7 suited as bluffs. And everything above we call, or we call even better, or we 3-bet the even better hands like pocket jacks, of course, or pocket jacks or better than that for value in that instance. Let's see here. The calling range we play depends on our opponent's range, as we should defend wider versus lags and steal raises, and tighter versus nits and tags. And the goal of our calling range, this is one thing I do for my notes. Okay, this is verbatim. The goal of our calling range is to defend a wide enough range to make our opponent indifferent to raising or folding his bluffs. And then so this is a concept that it took me a while to wrap my mind around, and I'm not sure how well I have it ingrained in here because I'm not really good at explaining it. So indifference means we don't want indifference means making our opponent 50-50 whether or not to raise or fold. So let's say he's in the cutoff. Let's say he's on the button. He's reasonably sure the small blind is going to fold no matter what, right? And we're in the big blind. He knows that we're going to call 50% of the time. Let's say he thinks, oh, he calls 50% of the time, he folds 50% of the time. That's the goal with your calling range. The goal is to make it so the opener won't expect a call or expect to raise or expect to fold from you. In that instance, like, you're hard to read for him. If he's indifferent to raising or folding his bluffs, that means that he can raise, he can fold, because he's not sure how we're going to react to it. And that's how I always interpret that sentence or that line right there. And that's the goal of our calling range. We defend wide enough so that he doesn't know if he should bluff or not. And then, if he doesn't know what he should do, then obviously that's better for us, even though we're playing out of position. Not even though, because we're playing out of position, any question in his mind or any uncertainty in his mind helps us. It works to our favor for sure. I just did a lot of talking. Yeah, so that's that right there. Let's see. This means that we should feel it's automatically profitable to open. Oh, this means that he should feel it's because we don't fold too much. Okay, one of the reasons why you want indifference is because, let's look at it from our perspective. If we're the button and we know that the small blind and the big blind, they both fold to steals 90% of the time, great, let's open any two cards here. Let's bluff, let's bluff any two cards because we can expect folds most of the time. If we see that their fold to steal is like one of them is, 65%, the other one is 65% as well. Oh, that's a tough situation. Should I really steal here with my own Jack-8 suited? I mean, they're gonna, most likely one of the two of them is gonna call. They're not gonna both fold most of the time. This is not a good opportunity, or possibly not a good opportunity to steal. Maybe I should just fold. That's our goal with the calling ranges that we decide to employ. But the thing about most of our opponents is they don't think that way. They either call way too much or way too little. If they call too little, we can do a lot of steals. If they call too much, we should steal less but go for more value. Let's see here. I'm not going to read every single note. Like, I watched the whole video, took as many notes as I can. I'm just going to hit a few different notes here. Some important considerations. It's good to know what we should do so we can spot the opportunities in our weaker opponents. So it's important to have a solid post-flop strategy, obviously. The ranges are based on play versus good opponents at 100 big blind stacks. So the ranges that he's going to give us in a little bit, in his mind, he was thinking that the opener was a reg, was a tag, a tight aggressive player who knows what they're doing in every instance. And the reason why he did that is because obviously if you have a good solid calling range versus your opponents, let's say somebody super loose gets in there, you can simply widen that range a little bit, add a few hands just outside of that original calling range. If somebody super tight is opening, then you can shrink that range a little bit. You need to have a good baseline, and a good baseline is what you would play against a standard, not a standard, just a smart playing reg, like all of us. Let's see. You don't need to memorize these ranges, but the goal is to understand which types of hands go into which ranges and why. So why is a suited connector? Why is a suited ace? Why is a Broadway? Why are these offsuit hands in this range? Why are all the pairs in this range, but not all the pairs are in this other range? Like, you want to understand the thought process that he put into developing the ranges. And as he talks in the video, as he talks about the ranges, he gives you all those thought processes as he's speaking through them. Newer players should defend a bit less from the blind since playing out of position with weaker hands is difficult. That's absolutely right. Factors which affect the width of your range. This is some pretty important stuff. Factors to widen: you're last to act and you had more than one previous caller. So there's plenty of money in the pot. You're last to act, so there's no more action behind you. You're not reopening the pot by 3-betting at all. You're ending the action. You're going to see a flop. When that's the case, you can widen your calling range a little bit more. You're in late position with a weak loose aggressive player as the preflop opener. Makes sense. He's loose aggressive, opening a ton of hands. You can widen your range a little bit. And versus a small bet size like 2 big blinds. If a guy's just min opening, sometimes those min opens are aces, and they min open in order to 4-bet you. But sometimes they also limp in order to 3-bet you after your isolation raise. But yeah, these are good instances to widen your range. And then factors to tighten your range. So you want to tighten your range when there's a risk of getting squeezed. So, you know, you're in the cutoff, and there's a very good chance after you call, the big blind, the small blind, or the button. Yeah, the big blind, small blind, or the button, they will often squeeze you. If there's a good chance of that, then you might not want to call in the first place, especially with the weaker parts of your range. If you got pocket aces or kings, hey, that might be a really good opportunity to call, let them 3-bet, and then come over with a 4-bet. Or even a 5-bet if the original opener 4-bets, whatever, you know. So there's all these kinds of options out there. But you want to tighten your range in general when there's a fear of getting squeezed. If the open raises from a very tight player, of course, and the larger the bet size, the tighter your calling range should be. So that should constrict it. You know, if somebody suddenly opens, the game is going along, everyone's opening 3 big blinds, and suddenly somebody opens to 5 big blinds. Why would you call with your Jack-8 suited? You know, just don't do it. Just fold it and then figure out, you know, hopefully the hand will play out. You'll get to see showdown. See what he opened with the Jack-8 suited right there. You know, 3 big blinds might be worth the call, but 5 big blinds, he's throwing a monkey wrench in the system. You don't have a great hand to make the call. You might as well just fold it and see how it plays out. So, yeah, like I said, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Ranges are great to have. They're great to use, but you need to consider all these other factors before you decide to make your play. Let's see here. Calling ranges versus under the gun. Okay, so these are the different ranges that he gave. Calling ranges versus under the gun. Let's see if we can zoom in. How does it look over there on Twitch? I guess it's okay. So, of course, versus under the gun here, we can scroll. So when you're in the MP, you have an 8.4%. You can see how it's a very, very narrow range of calling right there. And in the cutoff, it's a little bit wider, 9.5. On the button is the widest it's going to be at 11.2% right here. And the reason why is, of course, because you have ultimate position. Other callers after you, the blinds, you have position on them, and there's less of a chance. The later your position, the less of a chance you're going to face a squeeze as well. Small blind is very, very narrow, 3.6%. I love seeing such a narrow calling range out of the small blind. And the reason why, of course, is because you're purposely calling right now to see the flop out of position. You're giving that pre-flop opener, that under the gun pre-flop opener, you're giving him position on you with a very strong range post-flop. And then so you need to counterbalance that with a very narrow range for yourself. And then in the big blind, because you already have one big blind out there, you know, it's a bit wider, back to 8%, which what was the MP 8.4%? 8.4%. So what did he remove? Probably some of the suited connect, probably small pocket pairs. Oh no, yeah, he removed a lot of the suited connectors, but he kept he added a couple pocket pairs down below it right there is how he changed that. So basically he just flip-flopped, added some stronger hands that can flop sets, as opposed to those suited connectors. Makes sense. I'm good with that. Yep, small blind is very small. Yepers. Let's see. Calling ranges. We're not going to go through every single one of these ranges, of course. I'm just giving you kind of a standard. Let's take a look at a calling ranges versus the button here. Okay, so you're in the small blind and the big blind. What does he recommend you call versus a regular player? Thanks, Al. Cool beans. I will smell the roses. Gotcha. Thanks. Yep. No worries. Yep. Spelling. I understand. Thanks, Al. Yeah. So Al Spath right there is in the chat. He hosts. He has his own Twitch channel and Positive Poker Insiders, and he hosts every time my show goes live. He hosts it on his through his channel as well, which is pretty cool. Thank you, Al. He's helping me spread the word. He's helping to get more eyeballs on my stuff, which is really sweet. So let's see. Calling range, big blind versus small blind. Oh, well, no, I didn't want to do that. Oh, no, that was down here. Big blind versus... Oh, we're going to get to that because that's a super wide range. So small blind versus a button open and a big blind versus a button open right here. Oh, hey, Posse joined us. Thanks. Good morning. What's up, buddy? well, I won't type that in. I just said good morning on the stream, and I think it's on a 1 second delay or 3 seconds or something like that. Anyway, so versus the button open in the small blind, you're definitely going to call with a very narrow range. You're going to 3-bet with plenty of hands. Let's take a look at the 3-betting range. So obviously, so if we take a look here, obviously, if we're calling with all of these and we're not calling with an ace-10, what are we doing with it? We're not folding an ace-10 but calling with an ace-9. No. We are 3-betting this right here. So he recommends, I don't remember what it was, 10s, ace-10 suited, bit bop, king-jack, ace-king all the way down. Ace-10, I doubt he recommends ace-9. But he recommends those as 3 bets. No. Let me see. King Jack goes. So those two, all the 10s are better, and then these ones. Okay, perfect. So in this instance, he recommends 7% of the time calling the open raise from the small blind, which I'm good with this. I like all of this, based on. For my own opinion, I am actually going to call if I'm calling with 6s. I'm basically calling to set mine, right? That's the only reason I'm calling with 6s. I'm not calling with 6s in the hopes, against a button open, in the hopes that my 6s are going to hold up and we're going to check it down flop turn river to see a free showdown and my pocket 6s win versus a king queen offsuit that didn't hit a pair. I'm not hoping for that at all. When I'm calling with 6s, this is me personally. I don't remember if he talked about it or not, but if I'm calling with 6s, I'm calling to set mine. Well, if it's a good set mining opportunity with 6s, it's also a good opportunity with deuces. So I'm calling all the pocket pairs in this instance. Not all, I'm sorry. 8s or below. I'm a fan of 3-betting the 9s myself, especially versus the button open, especially versus a loose aggressive player. They're going to fold quite often to the 3-bet, and I like pocket 9s. It's right in the middle of the 13 card range. So you do not super often, but kind of often you flop an overpair and you can put pressure and get the king queen, the king jack, all those different Broadway hands that open that didn't hit a pair. You can get them to fold on a lot of flops. So I like the 3-bet with the 9s. But anyway, if I'm set mining with 6s and 7s, I'm set mining with deuces through. If it's a good situation to set mine, it is a good situation. So he recommends here 3-betting with 9.5%. Great, I'm down with that. So that means we're 3-betting here. We're cold calling with, now I need to see it again. So 126 combos. Let's remember that number. Whip out the calculator. 126 combos is what we're 3-betting with, right? How many combos are we now adding to the mix by cold calling? Of course, all the pairs. Great. Okay, so all but the Jack 10. Now, the first part of the range was 3-betting. Now it's cold calling right here. So we're up to 18.3%. So 242 combos. We're defending 18% of the time versus a versus a button open, which is just fine. By the way, if you don't know already, if you hit the icon next to the gear on the lower left, okay, you see who is in the room from time to time and can give them a shout out. Really? That's the viewer list, eh? Thanks, Al. Phage went, Positive Poker's posse, and Vader is in the house. Okay, sweet, guys. Awesome. Thank you very much, Al. I'll even type that in, eh? Sweet. Okay, I didn't know that. And ask them where they are from, how they found you, and don't forget to follow you for notifications when you go to live stream. Sweet. Sweet. Twitch tips from a titan of the... I can't think of another word. T for poker. Tables. Ha! Nice. Twitch tips from a titan of the tables. Hey, Dalen, how's it going? I'm doing my stream. Are you going to go play games? I plugged it in. I think I plugged it in the kitchen.
No, it's not that.
Oh, okay. Well, if you remember where it is, my son just woke up 5:50 in the morning. I guess he's definitely not going to go back to sleep. So whatever. He's up now.
I woke up at 5:30, waited for like a few minutes.
Oh, did you? Thank you. He said he woke up at 5:30 and then hung out for 20 minutes because I would have told him to go back to bed at 5:30. But 5:50 is on the cusp. He can stay up now. Anyway, so okay, so. Yes, we went from 126 combos to 242 combos now, or 18% defending, which is really good. But I'm sure that he would recommend a few 3-bet bluffs in this instance as well. Because we had 126 combos of 3-betting, we've got to include, a pretty good amount. So I'm going to write this down here. We had 126 3-bet. Not exactly all of it was for value. King Jack offsuit isn't for value. King Queen's not. I guess you can think King Queen's for value. Ace 10 suited wasn't for value. So some of these were kind of semi bluffs with decent hands with blockers and stuff. But I would also tack in probably some of these as 3-bet bluffing hands as well. Maybe even a King 8 suited. And we don't have to do these ones, but you could throw these in as well. But that might be a little bit too much because we had some semi-bluffs up here. Let's take that out. So now we just added a few more bluffs to our range, and it's good to show up with these sometimes on the flop because you can hit super strong, and it's also a disguised hand. Oftentimes people don't expect the suited connectors as 3-bet hands. It's possible they do. I expect it because I do it all the time, but it's possible they don't. Good morning for me. Yeah, that's right. Philippe. It is afternoon for you. I think you said you were 9 hours ahead of us. Hey, and you got off work early. Thanks for joining us. So anyway, Ace Deuce through the Ace 5 are semi-bluffing hands, and then 10-9 was a calling, and then so 9-8 through 7-6 are semi-bluffing hands, which are good to show up with. So now that was 126 and it was 242, so we just added 242. So we added 28 more hands to our 3-betting range. So altogether, 154 hands that we're 3-betting, which is pretty good. About half of our defending range, a little over half of our defending range is 3-betting. We could actually take these out if we don't want to 3-bet bluff so many more hands. Now we're a little bit closer to 50-50 calling versus 3-betting here. And that'll make us just a little bit harder to read. He doesn't know what hands that we're doing it with, which is pretty good. I like that. So, but then looking over here on the big blind versus a button range right here, he recommends that we're calling 28%, which is pretty darn wide, which is pretty good because those button steals are often very weak hands. These aces, so we're 3-betting everything greater than this, guaranteed, of course. Oh, it looks like a Minecraft axe. Do I have one? I have a Minecraft sword up there. Yeah, it looks like a Minecraft axe. So this right here is our 3-betting range. Our calling range is right here. I'm pretty good with this calling range for the most part. If we're calling through threes, I'm calling through deuces. I just can't. The reason we're calling, like I said before, got to set mine deuces as well. And I understand 3-betting the Ace 9 suited, but just calling the Ace 9 off, definitely. He's got lots of kings and queens, jacks, suited connectors, suited gappers, offsuit hands in his opening range. All of these aces have those beat, so you've got to at least play all your aces in this instance. I like playing a majority of the kings as well, and the queens. I mean, in the offsuit realm, the worst hand he has is 8-9 offsuit and king 7 offsuit. I'm good with that. I'd be fine with getting rid of all the 8s and only sticking with offsuit 9s or better as well. That's my own personal opinion. So looking at this range, this is he's a really good player. I can't remember his name or what country he's from either, but he's a really good player. He's given a lot of thought to these ranges. Most of our opponents don't give this much thought. So if we take a look at this range right here, this is a much tighter range than a lot of our opponents in the big blind call with. A lot of big blinds, especially those fishy players that we want to play with, they're calling with almost every suited hand. Even 7 deuce suited I've seen calls with before, and 6 deuce suited. They think, hey, it's suited, I can flop a flush draw, I can stay in, catch him, take out his overpair, whatever the fish thinks is what they think. So these are the kinds of, oh, hey, Dalen, here, go over there out of the camera. Thank you. It's a distraction with you walking behind me. You're still looking for your tablet?
Yeah.
Isn't it in the kitchen, plugged in?
No, it might be in Mason's bedroom.
Just go get on Mom's computer. Okay. Cool. So anyway, where was I? Yeah, so our fishy opponents are going to call with so much wider range than this. But it's a good idea as we're working on figuring out what our opponents call with. At the same time, those studies inform our own calling ranges. So it's good to know what a good calling range is, what a good solid well thought out calling range is. We can start calling with ranges like this, but we need to be aware that our opponents call much wider. absolutely. And then this is the big blind versus small blind range. And I almost completely agree with this. I'm not a fan of calling so many suited 2 and 3 gappers. I'd often prefer to just fold those. And I like doing more 3-bets with like an ace 10 suited. Like up here, he has ace 10 suited in his 3-betting range versus the button. Depending on the small blind. A lot of small blinds do open raise with tighter ranges, but against a lot of those guys that you encounter at the micro stakes, you can totally 3-bet ace 10, ace 9 suited, ace 10 offsuit in the big blind. But like he mentioned at the beginning of the video, and like I said earlier, you want to adjust your range, narrow it or widen it based on the opener. Yeah, so this is versus a standard good, strong player, and I like this. I'm not a fan really of going actually down as low as 7-6 or 8-7. I'd probably stick with an 8. I wouldn't call with a 9-7 offsuit. It's good to show up with hands like that sometimes, but you have the 10-8, you have the Jack-9 offsuit, you have a couple other suited gappers there. Yep. But I like his overall idea there. Okay, so let's go back to 100%. Okay, cool beans. So that's what I learned from his video right here. It was a really good video. I recommend that you watch it. Now let's get to some Flopzilla work. Let's see, we don't need to see all this stuff. Just doing some resizing here. Actually, I don't need that. All I need is this right here. Cool beans. So, okay. So we've been talking lately, the past 2 sessions, about different opponent calling ranges, right? 5%, 13%, and 30%. Well, a really good practice to help you understand those ranges a little bit better. Because our goal, of course, is to range our opponents, from street to street, assign them an accurate pre-flop calling range. And a very good way to understand their ranges is to see how often they hit quote unquote various boards, right? And so what I have here, 5%, 13, 22%, I'm adding another calling range right there, and then the super wide 30% calling range right here. So I'm going to start filling out, using Flopzilla, I'm going to start filling out these charts right here to give me a better understanding of how hard or how well these ranges hit various boards. And I've got the different board textures right here: high and dry, low and wet, middle board, middle wet, middle mono, 2 up, 1 down, 1 up, 2 down, super wet, chicken board, Broadway boards, and baby boards. So we'll start by what do we got? It's already 6 o'clock, 20 minutes. Yeah, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to start simply, so I have the example boards here. We're just going to do one board at a time with a 5% calling range, and I'm going to record how often it hits, and I'll go over hits in a second. Actually, and I should type this in. I'll go over it right now. Hits equals top pair plus and open-ended straight draw plus. So strong hands, top pair or better, which could be an overpair, pocket aces on a queen high board, that kind of a thing. So that's the total hit percentage right there. And the reason why is because when somebody hits the flop like this with an open ender or a top pair, they're so much less likely to fold. If they hit just a middle pair, an under pair, third pair, a gut shot, a gut shot, what else? Or zero overcards, they're much more likely to fold. We want to know how often they hit, so we want to know how often they're most likely to stay in the pot. So that's what hit is: top pair or better and open and straight draw. So let's just get started here. The first flop is ace 9 deuce, rainbow. This is a high and dry flop, one high card, and it's dry because it's a rainbow, as well as there's no of course, if somebody has a 3-4, they've got a 5 for a straight. If they have a 4-5, they have a straight draw. So it's not super wet. There's no open enders that they can have, and there's no flush draws other than backdoor flush draws at this point. Hence the word dry. Wet flops have a lot of possibilities to them. So we'll get wet flops in just a minute. So where's that 2-bet call-in? 2-bet calling range. So this is what we assigned as a 2-bet calling range. 5% 2-bet call, a super narrow calling range. Basically somebody who they would only 3-bet right here. Basically is it, and they just, or maybe even that one, but they just give up on everything else, maybe maybe they're just super nitty, like I was the other day with my ace king suited. So this range on this board, how often does it hit? Well, top pair, there is no top pair with this range right here because the ace is out there. It hits a set with the nines and the deuces, of course, but that's it. So it only hits 10% of the time. So you can think, you know, they're all percentages. I'm not going to type in percent every single time. That's going to be freaking annoying. I don't want to do that. So it hits... it hits the flop 10% of the time. So if you have a very narrow collar and the flop comes ace high, high and dry is what I mean to say. If it comes high and dry, then you could basically c-bet bluff anything. I could have a 7-6 offsuit here. I can have a 7-6 of clubs, no possible flush draw, only a backdoor straight draw, and a third pair potentiality there. River, two pair, or runner, two pair, of course. But I could have something like that, and I can c-bet every single flop, especially if I'm in position, because he's just going to fold. He only hits 10% of the time, and if he decides to stay in, he probably has an under pair, some kind of a pocket pair below top pair, which is the, well, we can't see it, but it's the queens, jacks, and the tens, or some kind of a weak pair, which is all the eights through threes. He could possibly stay in with. You just have to decide that for yourself what he will stay in with. So this range, the tiny 5% range on this flop, hits top pair or better, basically just 10% of the time. Middle pair, he hits 0, which is the 9. There are middle pair plus, I'm sorry, because the top pair, what am I saying, middle pair plus, so we should be clicking this just so we can actually see it for sure. 40%, we just add up these percentages here. 40%, the open-ended straight draw or better, oh no, just the open-ended straight draw is actually 0, and flush draw 0 on this board. That's great. No worries about open-ended straight draws and flushes. People could stay in with Jack 10 of clubs, for example. They see, hey, I've got 3 to the straight flush, 60% of a straight flush, I've got to stay in. Sometimes people say that, So that's the 5% range on this board. You could, if you want to do this kind of practice, you could just assign random boards, but that's just a little too random. You could get a lot of the same boards over and over. What if this was, right there? Oh, another ace high and dry flop again. You're going to get the exact same numbers, pretty much close to the exact same numbers as you got before. There's plenty more pocket pair below top pair in this instance, though. So let's clear that board. We're on a low and wet board, 4, 5, 7. I did double 4, 5, 7 right here. So it's not a monotone board. It's a two-tone board. You got 2 to a flush and then 1 non-flush card, whatever. So this on this board, let's see here. It actually hits the flop, open-ender right there. And I just leave all these different combo draws in. I don't click or de-click these at all. So, just leave these ones in when it comes to hitting. But I'm always concerned with open-ended straight draw better or top pair better. And this one actually hits 90% of the time, which is quite a lot, And the reason why it hits so much is because it has plenty of overpairs to the 7 on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the hands, which is almost half of its hands are overpairs right now. And the other 1, 2, 3. So there are 11 combos in this range right now, right? 8 out of those 11 combos actually hit the flop with an overpair or a set, or even second pair right here. Which is really strong. A lot, a good portion of the range hits it really well. And of course, there's some open-end straight draw with the pocket sixes and stuff, and no flush draws because it's all pocket pairs. But in this instance, they hit 90% of the time. So this is the kind of board when their calling range is this narrow, when it's super, what do you call it? When it's super pocket pair filled, you want to watch out for sure. Let's see here. So top pair or better. I don't need this anymore. Top pair or, oh, it's easier. Top pair or better is 68% of the time. Middle pair or better, basically just adding that 80% of the time. So you can see this guy is staying in. Open-ended straight draw, 10. I always round up. I don't like to see points all over the place. Flush draws, 0, of course. Yep. So that's it right there. So on this low and wet board, against such a narrow calling range, you want to be super careful. And only c-bet for value, obviously. against, he hits 90% of the time. He's going to call 90 or even raise you 90% of the time. Not worth it. 10-9-8 rainbow, just a straight middle board. Let's clear all that here. 10-9-8. Nice. So he hits, we want to go open-ended straight draw or better, not the middle pair. So top pair or better and open-ended straight draw hits 47% of the time. Okay. Top pair or better, just the top pair, is 37% of the time. So we can expect, if we decide to c-bet, we can expect him to call or at least raise with the top pair hand 1/3 of the time, right there. That doesn't mean he's folding the other 2/3 of the time, because he could have some kind of a draw. He could have a middle pair or a weak pair that he wants to continue with. Oh, I guess no mid pair, because it's not like he has 9 jack or ace 9 in his range, but a weak pair, I should say. Middle pair at all, 0, and it's because there's no middle pair possible. If this was a queen, mid pair, oh no, mid pair, I'm sorry. So that's pocket pair below top pair. That this category gets added in. Mid pair is when you just, it's not a pocket pair, it's just one card in the middle pairs the middle card of the board. Yep. Good. Oh, hey, thanks, Lurm. I appreciate it. He said a really good stream. Is ACR even back up? Late at night last night, hooded, I took a look at ACR. Yeah, that's why I didn't play yesterday. I was going to talk about that. ACR had some crazy issues. You'd go to the lobbies. There was only 3 tables, and everyone was sitting out on the tables. Who knows what happened? But later on in the night, I took a look, and like at 9 o'clock at night before I went to bed, and the tables were back up again, and there was plenty of people playing. So today, I should be able to get another session. You too, hooded. You should be able to get another session in today. And that was a bummer. I was bummed out. I actually considered playing on Carbon because of that. But I want to record all my hands in one place. I want to have as accurate of a read on my play, on my current play, as possible. And if I played on Carbon and ACR, I'm not recording those hands. I can't access, maybe I can. I don't know how to access both hands and put them into one database like that. So I just didn't bother playing it all last night. I took the night off, watched the season finale of The Walking Dead instead. So open-ended straight draws 21% of the time. And flush draw, once again, all pocket pairs on a rainbow flop can't have a flush draw. He can only have flush draws on monotone flops. So middle wet board, let's take a look at this one. Jack 9-8 double suited. Jack 9-8 double suited. Sweet. Now this is a board that a lot of calling ranges hit this board really well. When you, for your homework, when you start filling out these other, and I'll send these to you via Word. I was going to talk about homework in a little bit, but when you start filling out these wider calling ranges on these middle wet and middle mono boards, you're going to find that they hit quite often, because calling ranges are full of hands that have a 7, 8, 9, or 10 or jack in them, you know. So they're going to hit these flops really well with a lot of different draws, a lot of different 2 pairs, a lot of different flushes and some straight flushes, of course. Flushes and flush draws, straights and straight draws, gut shots, open-enders, all that jazz. So let us see here. Oh, flush middle, oh, 0, of course. Middle wet now, Jack 9-8, double suited. We got that right here. So we could see how often does, oh, I should have cleared it. There we go. Jack 9-8, because that resets all of this stuff here. How come these don't reset? Interesting. Well, that's fine. So top pair better and open in a straight draw. Keep those ones in right there. So 47% of the time. You know, I'm gonna have to double check these. I'll come back to this because some of that stuff was unclicked. I wanna make sure that I'm good. It's a real quick addition process right here. So top pair hands or better. Yep, I agree with you, hooded. Definitely hoping to play. Top pair or better. So top pair or better is 10.5, so it's at a 26.3% top pair or better. No points, don't need that stuff. Middle pair. Just add that one in, so we've got to stop doing that. There we go. So 21, 36.8, 37%. Hits middle pairs quite a bit. So if you got somebody who is not flop honest, who is sticky, they hit that flop with middle pairs 37% of the time. They have plenty of reason to stay in, I would say. Open and straight draw 11%. Flush draw 0, of course, because we only have we don't have a suited hand. Let's go back to this 10-9-8 rainbow. 10-9-8. I want to double check it, Because yeah, that stuff was unclicked. It might have thrown things off a little bit. Yep, I had 47%. It's actually 58% here. So middle board is 58% on the 10-9-8 rainbow. Got it. Top pair plus 21, so it's 36, 37%. I don't remember what I had before. Same thing, 37%, because there are no middle pairs on this board. Open-ended straight draw, 21%. Flush draw, 0 time. Middle wet board, oh, once again, flush draw is 0. So 6, 7, 8 mono. Ooh. Bam, bit, bop. Yeah, I like clubs. I'm good with clubs. So this board on the 6, 7, 8. So let's see. Where's top pair? Don't worry about the flush draws. Just look at the over pairs. Yeah. So top pair, over pair 42.1. What is that? 54%. Wait a second. 58%. 58%. Oh, what am I saying? This is hit. Top pair, 58%. Hit to start with. Hit percentage is open and straight draw or better. Flush draws are better than open and straight draws. Although they're not, you know, you don't really want to hit a 6 high flush draw, but so be it if you do. Let's see here. They hit top pair. Let's get rid of the weak flush draw, actually. Tell the truth. We don't want that in. Because if somebody has pocket deuces with the deuce of clubs, how likely are they going to be to stay in, especially if you they're out of position. You c-bet 2/3 pot. They're not going to be happy. They might make crying calls. If they're a fishy player, they might be calling. But go ahead and throw out those c-bets against most players to get them to fold on these monotone flops right here. And if they continue in, they probably have maybe a very good club in this idea, in this instance, queen, jack, or 10, or a 9 of clubs. A 9 of clubs is great. You have an open and straight flush draw. Of course you're staying in. Right there, gut shot, straight flush draw. The jack and the queen are probably going to stay in because they have, you know, 3rd and 4th nuts. So I'm going to say that those hands are going to stay in. So altogether, hitting is 68% of the time. So against such a narrow range right here on this super wet board, you want to be really careful. Probably don't c-bet bluff on a board like this. Versus such a narrow calling range. I wouldn't. Oh, I guess you could if you have the ace or the king of clubs. You know, you're semi-bluffing in that instance, and you're hoping you hit your flush because you're hoping they call with one of those pocket pairs with the other club, which of course you beat. Middle pair or better now. Where are we at? 0. So what are we looking at? 42. It's just 58%. Same thing as the top pair or better because there are no middle pairs in this scenario. Open-ended 21% again, and the flush draws basically just 5%, not too often. So one of the things as poker players, we're often worried about our opponents hitting flushes. We're so concerned. We want to push them off their hand. We need to get value from these flush draws. And when the flush draw gets there on the turn of the river, we're often scared. Well, look at this. In this instance, we've gone through a lot of different boards. Most of them so far, against such a narrow calling range, most of them have 0%, like no flush draws possible. This is the first time we've seen a flush draw possible. But on boards like this, we're often overly concerned. Oh my God, he can hit a flush. He has the flush draw. I know he's got it. I've got to fold on this river. That kind of a thing. I think through this study here, you're going to learn to realize how infrequently people hit flush draws. They hit straight draws way more frequently. Of course, that's why straights are valued less than flushes, because they're easier to hit. You know, you should be more concerned, for the most part, you should be more concerned with straight draws completing than flush draws. But at the same time, people love to stay in with flush draws. So if you've got a fishy station or even a reg who has a decent flush draw, they could stay in on the flop of the turn just for their chance to hit the river. Let their actions, street by street, dictate how you narrow their range. And also pay attention to showdowns. If you see a player who loves to raise on the flush draws on the flop, then make a note of that. If they don't raise you, maybe they don't have a flush draw. If they always just check call down with flush draws, and then that's what they do here, you can put that in their range and just play accordingly when the flush hits or it doesn't hit on the river. Yep, but I think this kind of study will show you that flush draws aren't the biggest thing to be concerned with. 2 up, 1 down, ace, queen, foe. But bit, ace, oh, rainbow, right? I didn't put it, but yeah, 2 up, 1 down. So I didn't want to do a two-tone or monotone, just straight 2 up, 1 down, ace, queen, 4. So they hit top pair 0% of the time. and they only hit sets. Basically, is the only good hand. They have plenty of weak pairs. You can see 90% of the time, all those weaker pairs, third pair or less there. Open ender 0. I mean, on this kind of flop, ace queen, 2 high cards against such a narrow calling range, it only hits 10% of the time. That's great. On this kind of flop, of course, because we raised pre-flop and he just called, we can easily just rep the ace and c-bet in general against most players who call, unless they have a ton of aces in their calling range and not a lot of pocket pairs. We're looking at a very tight pocket pair filled calling ranges, which people who are calling tight, they are calling with pocket pairs in the hopes of hitting sets. They'll call with pocket pairs as opposed to the weaker aces because there feels like, and there probably is, more money-making opportunities with pocket pairs for hitting sets, and they'll just get away on the flop if they don't hit anything, as opposed to catching an ace with an ace-4, and you're all, oh, crap. In this instance, you got 2 pair, but whatever. With a weak ace, people don't like to call those so much. Some do, though, and take note if you're up against a tight caller who calls with a lot of aces. What are we at here? Top pair, please. Only 10%. Great. Which is the full hit range here. Middle pair or better, just 10%. Open-ended straight draw, a 0. Flush draw, a 0. Of course, the only time, if you're up against a guy who only calls with pocket pairs, the only time we're worried about flush draws is monotone boards. 1 up, 2 down. Example, king, 6, 4. Whoops. There we go. So king, 6, 4 flop right here. He hits. This range hits. We're not going to count pocket pair below top pair here. Wow, hits only 10%. Once again, just the sets, which is just the 6s and the 4s, which is great. So top pair or better, 10%. Middle pair now, this is where things... So if you've got a guy who's a little bit sticky, you can see they call... or they hit a middle pair better 70% of the time. So on this kind of flop, 1 high, 2 low, they have some sets in their range, but they have all those middle pairs that aren't going to believe necessarily that you have the king. Hey, you could have raised pre-flop with the ace queen, the ace jack, the ace 10. You could have raised with the queen jack, the queen 10. You didn't hit a pair here. His pocket 9s are good still, as far as he knows. So they'll often call one street with a second pair. That's something to be aware of. So in this instance, against a tight caller, you can expect quite often a call, at least on the flop, to see one street. They might be doing that in order to see if they check the turn, or if they hit their set on the turn, great. But if they check the turn, hopefully you check behind on the turn, then they can bet the river, or maybe just check and see a free showdown against your weak hand if you don't hit anything. So a lot of players with middle pair will continue for one street at least, because they're non-believing, as they should be. They're non-believing versus c-bets, as you should be as well. Open-ended straight draw, 0. Flush draw, 0. Queen jack 9. Ooh, this is fun. I bet this hits like a mofo. Queen jack 9. Hey, somebody just followed. Thank you very much. Let's see if I could see the name. Oh, I missed it. There it is. Hooded. Thank you for following, Hooded. I appreciate it. So the queen jack 9 suited right here. Super wet. We hit, where is it at here? 2 pair, the top pair. Okay. Open-ended straight draw. Oh, well, okay. So the weak flush draws hit quite a bit on this flop. So when it comes to just hitting, let's consider that third nut flush draw or better. The weak flushes, like, you know, pocket deuces and 3s, we're not going to consider that hitting. They're not going to be excited. It's only 26%. I thought it was going to be more, and the reason why, in my mind, I was thinking that there was going to be a ton of just flush draws in general. In my mind, I wasn't thinking about, you know, if we add every single flush draw, yeah, it hits 63% of the time. But there's some of those flush draws that we're not concerned with, for sure. So only 26% of the time it technically hits. Now, where does it hit the top pair or better? Only 16%. Not much at all. Middle pairs or better, only 16%. Once again, there are no middle pairs. This range doesn't have an ace, jack, king, jack, jack 9. Jack 9's 2 pair. Jack 10, jack 8, all those hands. Open and straight draws, yeah, sure. It has some 10s in the range, so for 11%. Let's see here. And then the flushes, I'll just say 5% once again. So you can see once again, this narrow range of all pocket pairs doesn't hit flush draws often at all, even on this monotone flop. King, king, oh, chicken board, king, king 5. This is a term that I learned from Alex Fitzgerald. I love it. It's a great term. So, paired boards are really hard to hit. You know, we don't have a ton of kings in our range. Of course, pocket kings, ace king, king queen, king jack, king 10 as the pre-flop opener. But there's already 2 kings on the board. That limits the combos of all those other hands that we can have. Thank you, Hooded. I appreciate it. He says, love the pod. Keep up the good work. So it limits the number of kings that we can have. His calling range has 0 kings in it, so we're not worried about it in this instance at all. We would have expected a 3-bet with pocket kings, even with ace king. So we're not worried about him having trips. But it's possible, you know, we don't put it in his range, but from his perspective, he might think that he has ace king, he has king queen in his range, you know. So this kind of board, because it is so hard to hit, that's where 2 loose aggressive or tight aggressive or 2 non-believing players could collide. You know, I could bet 3 streets flop turn river with pocket jacks here. He can call flop turn river with pocket queens. So we're just fighting for this pot because both of us think that neither has a king, when in fact, no, neither of us does have a king, but he just happens to have a better hand. Same thing could happen. I could bomb 3 streets with jacks. He can call 3 streets with 10s. You know, that can happen. Dueling over this chicken board, you know, 2 players going head to head. What can also happen is I bet he check raises. I bet he raises. He donk leads. I raise over him because, hey, he doesn't have any kings in his range. He can't hit this other than pocket 5s for a full house. So this is a chicken board, and I love the term that Alex Fitzgerald gave for that, gave to that for that, whatever. So on this chicken board, this range hits top pair or better. Or I guess you can't hit top pair, so I guess it's just it's not even this one right here. Top pair or better. Yeah, really, 5% of the time on this particular board. Now, if we looked at actually, let's go ahead and change this to a different board. 10-10-5. And the reason why is just so that we can see some top pair hands here. Or over pair, technically, I guess. Oh, got another follow right there. Can't see your name yet. It hasn't popped up for me because the stream is on a little delay. Hey, Rob Gag! You're here, buddy. I play with Rob Gag occasionally on ACR. And a really good player. I think Rob, I think you just single table it, right? Maybe you double table, 2 table sometimes your sessions. I don't remember, but yeah, 1 or 2 table player. Really smart, thinks through all of his decisions. I've seen him on some study streams with Pro Fish Poker, Dennis Peterson, and Rob knows his stuff. So thank you very much for joining, Rob. I appreciate it. So let's see here on the chicken board, 10-10-5. How often do we hit? Oh, it's not 5% anymore. It's the over pairs or better, open and straight draw. Yep, got 28%. So, yeah, 28%. So we saw on that other board only hitting 5% of the time on those pocket kings, which is not much at all, which was basically just the full house. 5s full of kings was the only thing that range hit. This range hit on that board. Top pair or better, just straight top pair without the draws. Oh, same thing, of course, because there are no draws on this board. Middle pair or better. So we can add this puppy in. That's 69. Ooh, 69 dudes. Open ender 0. Flush draw 0. Okay. Good. We've got, oh wow, right at 6:30. Sweet. Ace queen. Oh, Broadway board, of course. Ace queen jackaroonie. Okay. So on this board right here, all the big cards, this guy is going to hate this board other than having pocket queens and jacks. There's 3 big cards. We raised preflop. He called. He has most of his range. 9 out of 11 hands are just crap hands. 81% of the time he has absolutely nothing in his range, as evidenced by that right there. So he only hits 20% of the time on this board. He has a top pair or better. Only 10%. And he has the middle pairs 10% or better. Middle pair or better 10%. 0 straights, open into straight draws. He has some gut shots possibilities here, but I don't really count gut shots. A lot of players will stay in with them, but for myself, I fold most of the time to gut shots. You only have 4 outs to the gut shot, right? And that means 4 outs means you have 8% equity in the hand if you're relying on that gut shot. Any bet an opponent makes, you're not going to get the proper odds to call with an 8% equity hand. Most players who pay attention, who know anything about odds and equity, they don't really follow the gut shots unless they have 2 overcards with the gut shot. So, for example, well, let's do this. Flush draw is 0. So let's change this board real quick. So, you know, whatever, a 7 or something. So if they had ace king right here, not of hearts, make it so there's no flush draw possible. Let's say they had any ace king. They've got the 2 overs along with the gut shots. So they have 6 outs for hitting an overpair, 3 aces, 3 kings. They also have 4 outs for the queen, so that's 10 outs total. And let's say they did have I'll just put it here, no big deal. Let's say they had the ace king of hearts. Well, they also have the backdoor flush draw for 1 additional out. I always count backdoor outs, backdoor draws as 1 additional out. So they have 11 outs in this instance, which is 22%, which gives you a little bit better equity to call versus some smaller bets. But with so many hands that can help you on the turn, so many cards that can come that can help you on the turn, this is a good spot to check raise if you were the caller in this instance. Let's say he did have ace king suited in his range. This is a great spot to check raise for him because he has so much backdoor equity as well as just overpair equity as well as gut shot draw equity. So that's a good opportunity for him to do that. Now a baby board. Oh, what is it? Deuce 3-5 rainbow. Oh, okay. Deuce 3-5 rainbow right here. He hits the flop a total of, we're going to take away a pocket pair below top pair, which is only the pocket 4s. I would never consider that hitting the flop. Sure, you have a gut shot, but not a great one. Open ender or better. All these combo draws 100% of the time. Look at this. So this is other than that low end wet. So once more, the low boards against a guy who calls all those pocket pairs. These are really terrible boards to c-bet at. For one thing, to c-bet bluff, you know, of course you can c-bet for value if you open with pocket 5s in this instance, which is a great thing because he's going to be calling or raising with his queens, jacks, 10s on the 5-high board if you have the set. So we can see once again, versus such a narrow calling range right here, those baby boards, he hits super hard. He hits middle boards and baby boards really hard. So if you got a guy who calls you with a narrow range, beware those boards. Do not c-bet bluff. C-bet for value instead on those boards. Conversely, if you're up against this calling range and it's the ace high board, the 2-up, the 1-up, even the Broadway boards, anything with big cards, because he doesn't have a lot of big cards in his range, and if you hit a strong hand, you'll probably want to check because he's folding most of his range right there. But if you're bluffing, you'll want to bet because he's folding most of his range right there, you know? So on the Broadway board, if you got pocket 5s, yeah, go ahead and bet. He's going to fold most of his range right here. Yep, so top pair or better is, what is that, 74 plus 15? Wow, 89%. He hits that pretty hard, I'm going to tell you. Middle pair or better, we just add a little bit here. So 10, so that's 20, freaking 99% of the time he hits middle pair or better. Basically 100, actually. Well, let's just double check here. Oh, that's my alarm going off. 100% of the time, yeah, it is. Yep, 100%. Open and straight draws, 11%, and flush draws, 0 on this one. 1 second. 6:30. That means it's time to go. It sounds like both of the kids are up right now, and yeah, both the kids are up right now. They're already playing games and stuff. So I've got to go make a breakfast and make coffee for my wife and me, of course. So, this is great practice. As you can tell already, we learned a lot about this 5% calling range, how it interacts with these different boards. So I'm going to send this out with today's email this morning. I'm going to send out this totally filled out. I'm going to do this off the felt, away from the study session right here. I'm going to take care of this 22, the 30%, but I'm not going to share it with you. Later on, as we're going through these notes, you might see me scrolling up or down from the current day to previous days. You might see me actually have these entered in, but this is going to be your homework. I want to see you do some work on your own to improve your game, to improve your understanding of how your opponent's calling ranges hit various flops. This kind of work will give you so much better understanding of how to approach flop, turn, and river play. It also give you a ton of help when it comes to hand reading your opponents. So this will be sent out soon to all of you. Alrighty, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hooded. Take care, buddy. I'll catch you later. And everyone else who's in the stream, Vader, Rob Gag, Seth Mack, Positive Poker Insiders, Al, of course, Phage Went. You guys are all here. Thank you very much, and I will catch you on the flip side.